we are really pleased to be able to welcome you all. Actually, so many familiar faces as well here.
Yeah.
It's fabulous to see you. And we can definitely say that the book is out. So
wow.
Great.
you can see it's substantial, and it's already it's available on Amazon. So if you it will, and we're getting it put into an ebook, but that's not going to be for a little while more. It takes a while to convert it, but it is available now. And part of what we want to do in this next little bit of time is to share about what's in what's in the book. And we're, as you know, our plan is to then keep this sort of launch event going over the rest of the week, where we will go on to a deeper dive, more or less with respect to each chapter. And we've announced that, but we'll say a little bit more about that as we go. So I want to first give everybody a chance. I want to just have our authors and our illustrator. I'll just say hello to everybody, say our names and where we are right now. So starting with me, I'm Robert Dilts, and I'm in my house in Paris, France at the moment. And I pass it over to you, Jean-Francois.
So I'm Jean-Francois. I am from Besançon on the eastern part of France, and I pass it on to Kathrin in California.
Yes, I'm in the morning sun here in California. My name is Kathrin Wyss. I'm originally Swiss, but currently living in the US, and I give the hand to Colette.
And I'm Colette from Quebec City, Canada, and it's afternoon here, so lovely to be with you guys.
And who do you pass it on to, Colette?
I pass it on to Elisabeth.
Hi, I'm Elisabeth, and I am from the south of France, near Nice. And I pass to Mickey.
Hi, everybody. Mickey Feher in New York City right now. So good to be here. Back to Robert. Antonio, yeah.
Antonio.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm Antonio Meza, and I live also in Paris, and I'm delighted to see you all here.
And we all together, definitely, we wrote this book collaboratively, and we took it as a major part of what we wanted to do, to make that collaboration be a part of how we wrote the book. And each of us was sort of spearheading, one or two of us was spearheading a chapter. And then Antonio not only did the illustrations, but he did the layout of the book. And I can tell you the first thing my wife said when she started looking through the book, and I'll show a little bit of it maybe as we go, she said, "It's beautiful," and it really is. So I want to just really honor Antonio's great aesthetic intelligence.
Which is also a key intelligence in generative consulting, is aesthetics intelligence.
That's right, and it's aesthetic intelligence is supported by collective intelligence, because, as Antonio will share, I'm sure, we collectively looked at the illustrations, decided on the style, which is a very, very different style than Antonio had been doing for the first SFM books. And I really want to just acknowledge, it was such a major change in style. It would be sort of like me shifting from doing the kind of books that I've written to, I don't know, writing some kind of, a novel.
Robert.
So we have, we don't want to keep people long, as we said, because we do have several events each night at the same time, or each day, depending upon where you are. We're going to be having a different focus through this week. And we wanted to just take the time now take roughly about 5 minutes each to share a little bit about the book, about our intention for the book, and a little bit of, let's say, preview or overview of the chapter that we wrote. so that, you know, you have an idea. And then we'll be again saying a little bit about what's coming up in the week. What we thought is it might be a good idea, just for the sake of presentation, that whoever is not speaking, that we would turn off our cameras and mute ourselves, so that it's easier to sort of follow the person that's speaking. And so maybe if we just do that, and I'm going to just do a quick start here. I'm going to start sharing my screen. And so here's our book cover, and it's, as it says there, it's about tools for creativity, consciousness, and collective transformation. And I want to just say very quickly, you know, so it's generative consulting. What do we mean by generativity? So generative, it's a form of creativity, obviously. And I love this quote by Albert Einstein, where he says, "Creativity is intelligence having fun." But it is a special type of creativity because it means to create something that has not yet existed, that has not existed before. And so it's essentially about the enrichment, is creating, discovering something new. And in fact, we say that, you know, generative usually means it's something completely new, hasn't existed before. The root of generative is the same as genius, and that's why I have Einstein over there. He had thoughts that nobody had before that have really revolutionized the way that we live in our world. So what contexts require generative change? So meaning that you can't just do what you've already done before. It's not just an incrementally improving something that already is there. It's really coming up with something completely new. You've got to do something that is unprecedented. And obviously in times of growth, where we're trying to grow into a new area, that's where we need to be generative. Clearly, in times like we are all living right now, and it's happened to me probably 3 times today, I've already had programs that were set come into question. So this notion of getting through crisis, and then managing transitions, and transitions meaning where we're not necessarily in crisis, but we have to change, and we can't just keep doing things the old ways. So, and as you'll see, each of us was kind of focusing on a chapter. I'll be passing this on to different ones of our authors. So we each were sort of authoring about these different areas, and then also how they integrate. And if we take some principles of generative change, and big part of what the book explores is the importance of a generative state, that it is about going somewhere completely new, and that you can't know when you start what will be your final destination, but you must be clear about your direction. Also, not only the importance of a generative state, but of generative relationships. And this is so important in consulting and generative consulting. So this is where you have a field or a space of conversation where 1 + 1 is more than 2. It's 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. Also, as we were saying just kind of a little bit ago, it really stresses the importance of aesthetic intelligence, meaning harmony of how everything fits together, but also of multiple intelligences. So not just verbal intelligence, but visual imagery, metaphor, our somatic expressions. Another really key aspect to any form of generative change, but especially generative consulting, is the approach to dealing with so-called negative influences, where we use kind of the metaphor of Aikido, where rather than attack something back, you're really trying to create a different and more creative relationship with it. And then this idea of practice as a foundation for sustainable change. So as we'll see the book, and as when I go to the diamond model tomorrow, you'll see that diamond model has practice as a key part of it. So one of the things that we address in the book, and I think this is important, is the overlap, but also the difference between consulting and coaching. And some of you might be familiar with generative coaching, and there is a whole process of generative coaching that we do through the IAGC, International Association for Generative Change. And there is certainly a certain amount of coaching that does happen in consulting, and the book talks about that. It talks about some of that overlap. But we do tend to stress that consulting is really more about you're focusing on the overall organization, and consulting often involves a fair amount of advising. Whereas coaching involves more questioning, and it's more focusing on an individual and personal development. But what unites them is, at least for us, is the emphasis on empowerment. And again, you'll see that the book really goes into that. I just want to, for my little part here, I did the introduction to the book, and we're kind of presenting the framework. So there's a methodology where there's a framework and then a set of tools. And I'll touch upon a couple of these things just today, some of the principles or premises. But in my presentation tomorrow of what we call the diamond model, I'll be going over the 7 steps of the generative consulting methodology and the 9 core competences. And I'll be having, Kathrin will be joining me to also, help to sort of fill in on those steps and those competences. I'll show in a moment that we also kind of draw from the models, the 3 success factor modeling models on next generation entrepreneurship, collective intelligence, and conscious leadership. But a lot of what the book provides, as you'll see in the chapters, is some of the critical success factors that are necessary for making an effective diagnosis and making decisions. But then what we'd call key performance indicators that are crucial for planning and for tracking generative change. So as I was saying, these are sort of the 3, as we'll see, the chapters will tend to bring in a particular focus on one of these 3 areas. One is more related to entrepreneurship, one is more related to conscious leadership, and one is more related to collective intelligence and generative collaboration. I'll let the authors say a little bit about that. But clearly this notion of a generative state is particularly important for the book, where we try to bring in, and of course it's one of the challenges of trying to do this through a medium like a book, is that you have a primarily verbal medium, but generative coaching and generative state really is not only the sort of intellect and the verbal mind, but our somatic and our emotional intelligence, and then this notion of systemic, especially when we work, especially in bigger systems, this field intelligence is so important. And again, finally, this idea of multiple intelligences. As I was saying, not only verbal and how we use that verbal representational system, but visual, somatic, metaphoric, and the idea of collective intelligence. So again, you'll see that the chapters touch on each of those. We're gonna, tomorrow I'll be kind of giving you the overview, and we'll drill down a little bit more deeply on what we call the diamond model, which is, as you see here, this is sort of the organizing model of the book. And we'll be learning more about that, the 7 steps, the 9 competences, and the 3 areas of application. So I'm going to pass this over now to Colette, who wrote the chapter about stimulating growth. And so I'm going to say Colette is going to talk a little bit about her intention, what she wants to
So I lost a bit of what you said, Robert, but I'm imagining that you're saying you're here to talk about the chapter on growth. So everybody, the intention here in this chapter is to awaken the passion, the entrepreneur passion within us, and it's something that is really needed right now. I know a lot of people are seeing this as a crisis and difficult situations, but it's also an opportunity to grow. I know a lot of businesses have never been so expanding in these periods as they have. Personally, for the past 20 years, as I've been working with entrepreneurs. So in this chapter, we're there to awaken the fundamental elements that are needed to foster growth in your business. You don't need to be a startup. You don't need to be a new entrepreneur or business. It can also be a business that's around for a while but wants to expand. So we go around the 5 key elements that a business has to take care of for it to grow. I'll be presenting more about the circle of success, which is one of the core tools that we're presenting in this chapter. Also, you'll be discovering the mindset map that was created by Feher and Robert Dilts, and also illustrations with Antonio Meza. And I'm also going to be presenting you a few tools that are really useful, because when we're in a startup or we want to grow, sometimes we lose ourselves in different directions, and harmony and balance is important. We have decisions to take care. So we also have the opportunity to look into a few of those ideas. I'm going to also have a special interview with Tony Nutley, who is from Male Ninja. He's actually one of the case studies that I'm presenting in this chapter. He has applied the circle of success, and it has helped his business grow, and actually his partner's business to grow exponentially. So it will be great to have him on the call on Wednesday. So if you guys want to come and meet him and ask questions on how he really applied all the fundamentals of SFM1 and growth tools and mindsets. So yes, this chapter is a lot about working on our mindset. What are the mindsets that are necessary to bring more growth into our business? So that's all for me. I'm going to pass it on to Crisis. I guess it's Mickey is coming on for Crisis.
That's Kathrin will do.
Kathrin, sorry.
Mickey will.
Yes, thank you. So when it's about who has written the chapter in the book on crisis, yes, it is me. And it's also true that Mickey will be presenting on Thursday the chapter on crisis, also very much linked with a case study, but he will share that with you later on. When it comes to crisis, what is important, we have chosen, or let's put it that way, Antonio and I have been conversing what would be an ideal visual to capture crisis. And he has geniusly found, those of you who know the Jenga block, you know, where you put stake and stake and stake and stake, and then something happens and whoosh, your block is away. But the point is you still have all those elements, and you can build something new. And with when you are as a consultant in crisis moments, and I reflected back since 2004, where I'm in the business of consulting, those are mainly the time where I'm coming in. We have been thinking what is really important. It's the ability to get very quickly the notion across to your client that not all is lost, and that not all is bad, and that not all is miserable. Because in crisis, and I guess that's also when you just think back maybe a few months when we all of a sudden needed to work from home, where all our clients or engagement, as Robert just said initially, are not what they're supposed to be, we start to focus on what is not possible, you know, what is not going on. So the point is, how can we as a consultant address, of course, honoring the stress and the need, and we have to muster all up our emotional intelligence to be there, but then also to take the people from where they are into a systemic thinking and into the how can you use what you have in building something else. So the chapter that I wrote is mainly basically how can you use tools and elements to go from a myopic crisis perspective into a more open horizon and into a generative way of dealing with resources, possibly in a different way, like a Jenga block that was first of the in the middle, now possibly is a founding thing for something else. So we are focusing on the influencing skills, on emotional intelligence, and how you as a consultant can stay centered while the environment of your client possibly is trying to make you nuts, because that happens often, that their energy of it's not going, it's not going, it's not going starts to affect you. And then you as a consultant, how can you stay detached, be in the system as a key resource, but also on the outside to allow to shape the environment. So that is just a myopic facet of how all the diamond can actually help you in any kind of situations. And one of the key tools in a systemic perspective of that generative consultancy is the collective intelligence. So I would like to pass it on to Elisabeth and Jean-François together. They have wrote it appropriately, collectively.
Thank you.
And I have the slides whenever
Thank
you're
you.
ready. Just let me know.
Do you want to start, Jean-François, maybe?
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I don't see the slide. Thank you, Robert. Yes, the idea in this chapter is how we can best manage in transition in business. And we know that we are going now through a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. The idea is to use multiple intelligences while remaining ourselves, sorry, and to mobilize collective intelligence. So the idea is also how we can use our left brain and right brain to act in a very generative way. We will go through a study case and a testimonial while using the team profile Periseo, and you will see how a tool which could seem to be left brain can in reality be very generative. Maybe do you want to add something, Jean-François? Or?
Sure. While we were writing this book or thinking about writing this chapter, we were having in mind that where the collective is so important is in transition, because remember Kodak, remember Nokia, remember MySpace, all of these companies at one stage were isolated in their strategy and were really part of a microcosm that was forgetting the other parts of the holons. And so we were having in mind that really to manage transition, like for Kodak, it was a big transition from the photographs, the pictures that people were taking, and going from argentic to digital were really a big transition that they haven't made. And it's really about the mindset of collective intelligence, not just one from inside the company, but from being able to take into account the bigger holons that you are part of and the movement that you are part of. So the intention of this chapter was to create awareness around how collective intelligence is a key aspect to manage transition, to move from one stage to the other, and that transition is a full-time job in a company because it's happening all the time, and it needs to create that kind of mindset for sure. But also in this chapter, we share some tools that both Elisabeth and we use in our practice as facilitators, because this is where a consultant becomes more of a facilitator. We were talking about a consultant, a generative consultant, becoming a coach, a generative coach in some ways at some point. And here in this chapter, we are talking about how a generative consultant is going to be inspired from facilitation practices. Back to you, Mickey.
One thing though,
Thank
before we go on, maybe before that you guys go on, just to share. So they're going to be saying more about that on Friday.
Right.
So yeah, so we'll go further on that theme about transitions through multiple intelligence, a lens of multiple intelligence. So now, Mickey, do you want me to go to your slide, or you want to talk first?
I'm going to talk a little bit first, and then I will ask you, please. Thank you. All right. So my chapter has the title, you know, how is all of this coming together? So how does it all come together? Because interestingly, when you meet a client, you know, the client is very often, when you ask them, so what phase is your business in? You know, they're going to say something like, well, we are in crisis, but we are transitioning from, you know, a previous ownership to this new ownership. And by the way, our new owner wants us to grow. So then it's kind of an interesting situation. So, you know, what is it? Are you trying to grow? Are you in transition? So life gets really kind of complicated. And what I'm telling in this story is essentially, in this chapter, is a story of a client where, you know, I was invited in and they gave me a brief, and the brief was very much along the lines of, you know, we are having a crisis because we are not growing enough. We have two cultures in this company. You know, one is the Swedish culture, the other is the North American culture. You know, we have culture of fit issues, so, you know, we have problems with the team. But we really want you to focus on improving the sales results. So that's how we started. And I decided that, you know, we're going to sort of accept the challenge as a consultancy, but I will try to really diagnose what's really going on in this organization. And so through the diagnostic work, you know, we basically realized that it starts with mindset. And there are tools that we can really use in order to help the person who is leading the organization for him to have clarity first, for him to have clarity on his purpose, his passion, and his personal vision, because only if he's clear on his own personal vision, he's going to be able to authentically lead this organization and team to growth. So I will be sharing a lot more about, you know, how that happened and what sort of interventions we used and what was the process and what were some of the challenges on Thursday. And Robert, if you could put in that one slide. What I wanted to share is, you know, my own kind of translation. I have been reflecting a lot on, you know, what is generative consulting? And I started out as a consultant working for Deloitte as a management consultant. And, you know, it's very interesting. One of the first rules that my boss told me is that you shouldn't have deep connections with your customers because it's unprofessional and you're gonna run into problems. And interestingly, what I found is that in order to have proper generative consulting and generative interventions, you actually do need a real connection versus a formal relationship. and I will be sharing a little bit about on Thursday too. In terms of, the second point here, I just wanted to share that to me, there are three key intelligences that a generative consultant has to work with. And one is something that, my colleagues here have been already referring to, which is systemic intelligence. And then there is what I call the spiritual intelligence, which has to do with purpose, soul, and, what is your mission that you're trying to realize through yourself and your business. And then the third intelligence is the emotional intelligence, which Kathrin was mentioning. The third, point here is bridging the intangible and tangible. So to me, one of the biggest challenges as a generative consultant is that, businesses expect tangible results and they have a hard time understanding intangible. So again, you need tools that help you to quantify, that help you to make intangible qualities more tangible for clients so that they can really understand and buy into your process. Again, something we will be talking about on Thursday. And then Colette already mentioned the mindset map inventory. I think for me, the key point about the mindset map inventory that I wanted to mention is that it is really a unique tool where you can connect big picture clarity about what is my vision and mission and ambition and role, with then self-leadership habits of success, which are I need them anyway, whatever my goal is. And then how do I get down to pragmatic, simple priorities, which are often about leading others, not leading myself, but now leading others. And so that tool is a really unique connection between the three levels. So thank you for listening to me. And I want to invite you on Thursday, where you can hear more about the chapter, the case study, and some of the things that I mentioned.
Maybe now we can have Antonio come on for a moment to say a little bit about his work in doing the illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Thank you, Robert. Well, it's been an adventure, definitely a generative adventure. What I would like to say is that you've already seen a few of the illustrations during this presentation, and of course, during the week, you will see a few more. I really hope that when you have the book in your hands, you will get a sense of this intention of combining the multiple intelligences, because that's definitely been one of the intentions of the whole team. I am the illustrator, but as Kathrin was saying before, the collective intelligence feeds the aesthetic intelligence, and it's been really an interesting and generative process in the sense that it's been out of my comfort zone, out of my usual style. And we started with that idea of creating something different, something that will create a unique style for this book, compared to previous books that I've had collaborated with Robert before. So I guess out of all these, one key message that I would like to convey or to pass is say yes to challenges. And this book is about consulting, about working with organizations, about supporting them through different periods that you've heard about, growth, crisis, transition. And each one of these moments have their own challenges. And with this book, you can get the tools and the mindset that you need to support these organizations to say yes to the challenge. And when you say yes to the challenge and you listen to the general intention and to what you have to offer as well, then definitely something new happens. This has been a generative process in that sense. I think that we created something quite unique, quite new, and that combines, I hope, through the text, this idea of having the more left brain and the more right brain combined, the visual, the language, but also the emotion together. And we really hope to get your feedback on that and to say, well, does the does the book convey all these principles as well for you? So we will be very happy to hear from you and to get your feedback. And of course, I've seen in the chat that people are asking for translations, and I'm sure some of them are already on the way. So thank you, and back to you, Robert.
I want to share that, like as Antonio was saying, that he, when we began, he actually did a whole scope of drawings for us that went from very left brain to very right brain, and various gradations in between. So we did really a lot of effort on that. And I thought I might just briefly share, so you can get a chance to see what the book, you can see the way that it's laid out, and how the different diagrams are there, and the kind of art that Antonio has done. So it's really, I think that the laying out itself is also an aesthetic act. And the imagery is as important part of what we're doing in the book as the words. So I just want to honor that with Antonio. So Antonio, maybe you can, I think we have about another 5 or so minutes, and maybe we can have everybody join us again and see if there are any questions just before we sign off. So Jeff, are you there as well?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, I don't see you.
Yeah, I'm here.
There you are. So welcome back, everybody. That's just a quick, so what we did is just give you a kind of a quick overview of the book, the chapters, why we wrote these chapters. We started this book, when did we start this, everybody? Well, we were definitely working in earnest more than a year ago.
December 2018, after the training of generative consulting in summer 2018, where some of you have been present. We decided that we want to capture that unique approach in a book.
Yeah, thank you, Kathrin. I think that's an important part of the background of this book, is that it started with us working as a team to run the generative consulting program in Santa Cruz, and then saying, well, let's, this was so useful, let's create a book from that. So I'm just curious, I don't know if anybody has any questions for us. I see Jehan does. Please, if you can unmute yourself. And
thank you, Robert. What a pleasure, what an honor to be with you all again. And I salute you and I thank you for this intelligent collective work. And I was wondering if there will be a generative consulting virtual training coming up soon, because that's the natural question that popped to mind.
So glad you asked. Actually, we were just speaking about that before going on, that in fact, we are planning to start a virtual generative consulting program in April.
Excellent.
We're currently in the process of designing that, and that will be again available for people from everywhere, because it will be online. So
thank you very much. That will be on my birthday in April, so that will be my birthday gift. And thank you very much. Looking forward.
Yes, and we really want to focus the training in a sense for the consultants to learn the new approach of generativity of consultancy. We have seen that there are there preliminary requirements? Yeah, the book. We decided that the people who have will be training a part in the training shall have the book, because one of the key things that when we made the training in 2018, we were having people that are fully trained in SFM who wanted to learn consulting, and we were having the consultants who wanted to learn SFM, and that's a very wide target audience. So the training will be focusing on making the unique secret sauce of the generative consulting, the generativity of consulting consulting being the key part. We cannot train people being consultant in an online training. That's simply not possible.
What we may do that we've talked about though is maybe have like a pre-session, like we did this for the conscious leadership program that we did in 2017, where people that didn't have NLP, we did kind of an NLP warm up, and we might do something like that just so that people maybe have, a sense of that. But what Kathrin is pointing out, and it's true that we found that people who were already consultants were able to actually get more from the generative consulting approach than people who had not been consultants, were actually trying to learn just to be a consultant to begin with. So I think the idea here is that generative consulting, it's a next step of consulting. It's not really a beginner consultant place. You do need to have some of those, those competencies.
Will there also be access to the inventory, the scorecard, the inventory, anything?
Speaking of the scorecards, yeah, that's a big part of the book. We'll be showing. Kathrin and I will show that a little bit tomorrow. Scorecards.
Tomorrow, be here tomorrow. Be here tomorrow. Kind of like not possible, yes, here and there.
Well, probably, one of the things that I've been planning on doing is in fact having the scorecards also done in an online version, like we have with the mindset map and with the Paricio tool that Elisabeth and Jean-Francois will be showing, so that you can actually have this way of getting online feedback. So yeah, we're realizing, obviously, many of us, that consulting work, like everything else, is having to be done more and more virtually for the time being. And then probably that's going to last even when things, go back to whatever new normal it will be. The virtual world is here to stay.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Looking forward.
Arturo asks about the certification of the training, and I guess we are putting together a pathway that when you have made the whole pathway, there is a certification of completion for it. But certainly we cannot certify someone to be a consultant, but that you have made the steps as a pathway of generative consultancy.
Yeah, it's the same thing that we do. So you do get you will get a certificate from Dilts Strategy Group. Also, you're qualified to become a practitioner of generative change and generative business through IAGC. But it's a similar thing there with generative coaching. When we do generative coaching, we're not trying to certify people fundamentally as a coach. We're saying that they know the generative coaching skills, and it's going to be the same thing with generative consulting. We're adding, we'll certify that you have learned this additional level of competency, and the certificate will explain and say exactly what it is that you're certified for. But, consulting, like coaching, is a very broad area. So I see some other questions in the chat coming. Can you let us more about that? Yes. We will let you know as soon as we have that. So yeah, we'll be planning that.
It's not April 1st. We know that.
It won't be April 1st. Let's see. Any other?
Sergey
has a hand up. Yeah.
Hello, dear friends. It's so nice to watch so many known faces.
I know, isn't it lovely?
Call Anna Kotisi on FaceTime.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't see Anna Courtesy in your contacts. Who would?
Yes. I am so excited. Watch the new book. Yes, and it was. Thank you very much for this introducing. I will be excited looking for that and addition for our course, in Russian. I put the place for our Russian books, SFM 1, 2, 3, and Generative Consulting 4. I put the place in 2 years before, and now we know about it. Thank you very much, and I'm very excited looking more about your interesting ideas in this book, because from first pages, Robert, I found these principles, and I try to find where is the principles.
Yes.
And not here.
No.
Yes,
no.
It's very,
here.
very good.
Yes.
Yes, very good. This is very good additional, and very good additional, like a mind map.
Yeah.
First slide was like a mind map of this course. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Sergey. And again, a couple of the key things that are those of you who were at the Generative Consulting program, the whole diamond model, it's really a new way of organizing. It's the steps and the competences are there, but it really shows how they go together and how they fit with the different areas of transition, crisis, and growth, and also there's a number of the tools and the cases I think really are very practical. So that was the two things that my wife said when she was looking through it this morning is it's very beautiful and very practical. And I thought, that's the way to do it.
Bravo, yes.
Yes, and I guess it's also a good place to say, watch us tomorrow for more.
Yes. Tomorrow, and we'll be on, and I will, as I said, I will be presenting the diamond model, and Kathrin and I will be going over some of those scorecards, and you'll be learning more about what's in the book and how you can use generative consulting.
And yes, there will be an ebook at some point. It takes a little while, but it's happening, and it's going to be the same time every night. So Tuesday night with Robert and Kathrin, and then
Wednesday night with Colette,
Thursday with me. And by the way, we're going to be team members each time, so it's not just those two people. They're going to facilitate, but we're going to be a team. And then on Friday, Elisabeth and Jean-Francois will steer the discussion and share some really interesting stuff. So we look forward to seeing it.
And we'll be recording each night session as well, each day's night session as well. So
to make it very attentive, you have to wait every day for the link in the newsletter, because it's every time a different link, because it's a collective effort. So we are using the systems and the resources from everyone.
A different Zoom, so you're going to a different person's home each time.
Yeah, as every chapter has a different style, because we, other than Robert, we are not mother tongue English. So you will have a Swiss-German approach, a Quebec approach, a French approach, an Hungarian approach, which makes it really juicy and interesting.
Okay, so everybody, thank you very much for joining us. And Colette's popping the cork on the champagne.
On the champagne.
And can someone post a link for subscribing the newsletter in the for Anna? She says, I'm not on the newsletter. You go to the dsg.com website, and there it should be. But I'm sure Jean-Francois, our magician in the back end, is swiftly making copy paste.
So a chin-chin to the launch of this book that's going to bring a lot of support and generativity in our businesses that need it now. And thank you to all of you to be those ambassadors that are going to bring it out into the world. Thank you for being with us. Chin-chin!
Chin-chin!
Yay, yay, yay.